That's fine. Yep, just record it and you're good to go.
Yeah, next time I'll set it up that way. Okay, so that for the future, so that you can monitor this. I just pressed the record button, so we're ready to go. Okay, so today we're going to talk about contracts. I think for me and for the folks on the call, to make this the most meaningful half an hour of your time, I think, and I don't know everybody really well, I would kind of like to hear how much experience you have with writing sales contracts and listing agreements, just briefly. And whoever would like to jump forward first and tell me, that would be great.
I'll go first. My name's Angela, and hi, Sally.
Hi.
I've been a realtor for like 2 years, so I have some experience. I had a few transactions, and so I kind of getting the hang of it, but I figured I can always take a closer look. The listing agreements are more new because I've had more purchases than listings.
Okay.
So that would be more of where I kind of need help.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next.
It's Arlene. I have zero, just brand new, so
Okay.
zero experience.
All right. Can I ask you something, Arlene? Do you anticipate writing a sales contract first or writing a listing agreement first in as you embark upon this lovely career?
I would say sales contract.
Okay. All
yeah,
right.
I would guess. Yeah.
All righty. Thank you. Hi.
I have no experience, but I don't mind which contract I'm writing first.
Okay.
Whichever comes first, I would love to write it.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's, I think that's how we all feel, especially when we're brand new. It's like, I'll take anything. Thank you so much. But okay. So I think for all of you, since with the exception of Angela, who's had a little bit more experience, I think I'm going to give a high-level overview, and then the next time I do a contract class, I'll dive into one or the other. And I think today will just take us about a half an hour. It'll be short and sweet, but I hope you walk away with some information that will help you and take some of the. I remember the first contract that I wrote. I was a businesswoman. I retired from AT&T after 23 years. I had been a legal secretary and a paralegal in my career prior to that. And here I am I'm writing up a sales contract for my buyer. And you would think, no worries, because all that legal experience that I had and business experience, and I was negotiating contracts on behalf of AT&T, $1 million deals, you know, as the lead negotiator. But I was writing my first sales contract, and my hand was like shaking when I was doing it. And actually I was typing it, but then I had to, you know, review it. And I got all nervous and bent out of shape. And I was like, why? And the reason why is I didn't want to disappoint the buyer into thinking I was that inexperienced. I didn't know how to fill out a simple contract. And I think I put undue pressure on myself, and I freaked out a little bit. So I expect that some people will have that same experience that I had, no matter how much experience you have in life and reading contracts and knowing things. The first time sometimes is a little nerve-wracking, because you don't ever want to have to go back to somebody and say, oh, I made a mistake. Could you please do this instead? You want to get it right. You want to nail it. You want to look like a professional. You want to move forward. So that's the spirit in which I try to teach this class, so that I take that quote unquote fear factor out about worrying about what you put on the page to give to the client and you don't want to embarrass yourself. I do strongly recommend that when you do write your contracts, if you are not working with the coach, and I don't know if you're aligned with the coach, you're not aligned with the coach, productivity coach, whatever the case may be, you need to align with somebody to review your work in the beginning. You want another set of eyes looking at those contracts, okay, to make sure that they're accurate, because that is probably the best way to ensure that you will not end up in an embarrassing situation of going back and saying, I'm really sorry, but you're going to have to sign this again. Okay, so today I think I have a few more that have just joined in. I'm probably not, it's 6 minutes after, I think at this point. I may not see people asking to get on, and I'm sorry to them, but we're going to move forward, and I'm going to share my screen. And I think today we're going to start off with the sales contract again, just based upon the experience level here. And I will hit the listing agreement briefly. Okay, Angela? Great. So sharing my screen, hopefully I have this up. Please let me have this up. And Sam, you'll let me know if everybody can see what I see.
So
I'm
far,
looking at my dot loop right now, and what I've got is a contract for purchase that I have just completed this past weekend in a multiple bid, and I got the multiple bid. Okay, woohoo for my clients. I'm in attorney review right now. Okay, wonderful thing. So I've gone into, I'm not going to go through the mechanics of dot loop and how to use dot loop. If you have dot loop questions, we will have separate dot loop classes so that it'll explain how to use dot loop. I simply want to look at the mechanics of what goes into a contract. And let's just keep in mind, it's not just the sales contract. It's not just the CIS, which you know you have to have when you first talk to a client, but we have a whole bunch of other things that you must have in your file, like the listing, and we have RESPA disclosures for title company and for mortgage company, and permission to advertise, and we have to have the home protection plan, home warranty program, brochure, and order form in there, and all these reasons have to do with compliance, whether it be a law of the state of New Jersey, like with the CIS, you must have that by law, or whether it be an office policy because of our E&O concerns. That's why we have to have a seller's disclosure. That's why we have to have a home warranty presented to a client, either accepted or declined. And by the way, our forms automatically have them decline it, so it makes it a non-pressure situation. But those are the reasons why we have to have them. So when you submit your file for closing, if these pieces aren't there, it gets very hard to go back and get something signed after the first point. It's very easy to get a buyer to sign every form you want them to sign that comes in the package that you will get from dot loop. Easy to get them to sign it when they're making an offer because they're excited. They want to make the offer. They may make a comment, man, this is a lot of paper, and all you say it's real estate. Yeah, it's a lot of paper. So you have success in getting every single piece of paper signed, and it's not a matter of I'll just fill out the contract of what I have to give to the other side and be done. No, because you will never get these other pieces done, and they all need to be done at the same time. Same is true for a listing agreement on the inverse. At the time that you are signing on a listing, you need to get every single piece of paperwork signed, and there's multiple pieces of paper, because guess what? Your chance of success of getting anything signed after that fact is pretty nil. And I've had a lot of people on our team, unfortunately, in the time that I've been the broker, which is about 1.5 years now for this office, I've had a lot of people come to me that never got the lead paint signed by one party or the other. With, you know, in some cases they're dual agency and they didn't get the one side signed, or they missed a box on it, a check box or initial box. And here's the cold hard facts. That lead paint is required by federal law. The lead paint requires that it's filled in correctly, and mistakes could cost an agent $16,000 fine for each mistake on the form. That's a pretty hefty fine. I mean, if you get a fine in that amount, it's almost like you definitely didn't make any money on the transaction, most likely, number one. And now you're being fined for something, and you really just don't want to go down that path. But it's hard to get anybody. You can't chase people after that fact. They don't want to do it, whatever the case may be. So it's imperative, and I want to make the statement about the lead paint in particular. It's imperative that you get everything signed up front. Okay, thank you for taking that message. That's the biggest message today. That's the number one. Okay, so I'm going to go into my contract package right now and show you what was presented to the, signed and presented to the sales agent. Not in this order because she reordered it, but I have an addendum for coronavirus. Basically, this addendum talks about should somebody get sick, what happens next during the period of the contract. It's in our forms files. I always include it. I have a pre-approval letter that I needed to get from the lender. I have the lead paint disclosure. And can we just look at the lead paint for just 1 second? Because it's so important on both sides of a transaction. Please note that it starts off with a statement that talks about what lead paint is, why it's important. Everybody needs to read that statement. The next thing states the property address, and now the seller fills out a few things. The seller talks about whether they have any knowledge of lead paint on the property, yes or no. The box needs to be checked, and they must initial on those lines. It's not just checking the box, initials too. Then the next thing is, if they had information, excuse me, they're going to provide the information to the other side. And they have to state whether they have information or they don't by checking the box and initialing on the line. The third statement is, If anything should change from how I've answered this form so far, I promise that I'll do the right thing. And they must initial on here. And then the seller signs it, okay? That is the completion of the seller side that must be done, okay? And you should get that from the listing agent if you're only representing the buyer, okay? And the listing agent should sign as well. The piece that gets filled out on behalf of the buyer is the buyer must read the following statements. You know, they acknowledge that they've received copies of all information above if it exists. I had somebody push back at me and say, well, they didn't receive anything because the answer was no and no. Okay, that's great. There was nothing to receive, but you're still acknowledging you received everything that could have been received. And so therefore they've got to fill out that line and initial. They've received a pamphlet, How to Protect Your Family. There's a lead paint pamphlet that's within .loop that they should receive. I always have them initial it. I actually put a signature block on the front page of that document, and I have them sign it so that I know that they've received it and they can't tell me they didn't get it. Then they have to make an election as to whether they want to pursue an inspection of the actual lead paint or not. Most people waive the opportunity. You see this box here in the check box? Most waive it, but that box needs to be, one of these boxes needs to be elected or the form's not complete, and they must initial on all lines. Then they sign, and then you as the agent sign. That is a complete lead paint form that's required, okay, without exception. Fraud notice is the last page of our contract. Basically, we're all familiar with what that says. Be careful who you send your money to. There's a lot of fraud out there. Here's the first page of the contract, also known as the Opinion 26. This is the part of the contract, and it must be the first page of any contract, but it is in our contract form, so there's no issue there. And basically, they make an election as to how they're being represented. So this backs up the CIS you've already given them, the Consumer Information Statement. And this actually tells them how they're being represented. So in this case, I was representing the buyer and not the seller, so the box is checked. If it's a listing in our office and I was only working with the buyer, I would have chosen both the seller and the buyer because we as a company are acting as dual disclosed agents, okay? The good news is it's very simple to know whether we're dual agents or not. If it's a listing out of our office and you are representing the other side, or both agents representing either side are out of our office, it's absolutely dual agency. If it's not two agents out of our office on that transaction, then it's not dual agency. Other Keller Williams are independently owned and operated just like we are, and we are not affiliated with any of those other offices. We have the same brand, but we are not the same company. Okay, we are separate companies. Makes it easy. And then of course it goes through, you got to hire, you should hire an attorney. The agent can't act as the attorney. The title company can't act as the attorney, etc. Only the attorney is allowed to act as the attorney. Okay, then the contract starts. I want to have you pay close attention to, and I'm going to focus more on filling the blanks and what the contract means. I'm happy to have a class on what the contract means with anybody that would like it, but I'm going to talk more about how to complete the contract so that you have that confidence that you've done it correctly. It is important that you have the full names of your buyer. So my buyers, I filled that in. Their address, their current address, where they live, that should not be left blank. It is filled in. On the seller, it's important that you know who the seller is. And in this case, I always go to the tax record, but I also knew that this was an estate. So I took the name of the person and I put estate of in front of it. Okay. The full address of the property. And then again, the full address of the property. And this happens, Succasunna happens to be located in Roxbury Township in the county of Morris. It's important that you fill that in completely and correctly. And the lot and block number need to be filled in. Okay, so no, without exception, those pieces of the contract are a must, without exception. Now, the purchase price is the total amount that the buyer was willing to offer. I typically don't do an initial deposit any longer. I only do one deposit. In the old days, we actually used to give a $1,000 check at the time that an offer was tendered, and then the check would be given to our office and held in escrow. We, Keller Williams Town Square Realty, hold no escrow deposits, okay? We will not hold escrow deposits. It's too cumbersome. It gets into a whole field of legalities if we mess up, and we just can't do that. So we ask that escrow deposits go to the buyer or seller's attorney. And typically when I'm filling out a contract, I always fill it out as the buyer attorney, and then it could change in attorney review as to where the money needs to go. But no monies are collected by me. And I typically just do the second deposit. You could just do the first, you could just do the second, but that's what I do. In this case, it was $15,000, which is pretty good on $450. And then the mortgage amount, and then what they have to bring to the closing table.
Can I just ask a quick question about that? Is there any benefit for, like, in terms of choosing the contract to put more in the initial? Like, let's say they took that 15 and made it like 10 today and 5 at the additional, or is that not?
No. I will tell you, between the first and the initial and the additional deposit, or what I'm calling the first or the second deposit, they both are in advance of, typically in advance of inspections and everything else. That is the escrow money, or the EMD,
Right.
the money deposit, depending on whose terminology is being used. So it doesn't matter how that's broken out
Okay.
at all. You can make it just one lump sum. It doesn't make a difference. If you go to paragraph 3, which is on the next page, Angela, this kind of explains a lot of things. I tend to use the defaults of the contract to my advantage, instead of defining dates. And the reason I don't typically define dates is because attorney review could be perfect, less than 3 days, or attorney review could be imperfect in my world. It's imperfect to me when it takes forever to get out of. And if I start defining dates in a contract when things are due, in fact, money could be due before you're out of attorney review, which is ludicrous.
Right.
So I tend to go with the defaults. And if you look at paragraph 3 and it talks about the initial deposit, what does it say? It says, if left blank, and I gotta delete this for a second, give me a second. If left blank within 5 business days after the fully signed contract has been delivered to both buyer and seller. 5 business days. So if the contract was signed and delivered back to both parties, it was signed by the seller, who's the last party to sign, and returned on the same day, on a Monday, what is 5 business days later? Somebody want to give me a clue on that?
The following Monday.
Thank you. So instead, in this case, and paragraph B is where who's going to hold, who's going to hold that money, okay, for the additional deposit. I'm sorry, what time frame for the initial deposit, paragraph B. I also left that blank, and that says 10 calendar days. So if I receive that contract on Monday, what's 10 calendar days later? When is that deposit due? Anybody?
Thursday.
Of the following week.
Yeah.
Of the following week, right? So there's not a big difference between 5 business days and 10 calendar days. Would we all agree with that? There is a difference, but there's not a significant difference, correct?
Right.
Okay, so that's probably why Sally Smith does the additional deposit instead of the initial. If anybody wanted to know why I pick one over the other. It's just a few extra days. Sometimes attorney review takes a little bit longer. Sometimes I fill in on the blank 10 days after attorney review. Depends, okay? And paragraph B on that line, on or before 10 days after attorney review concludes, is another way to fill it out. And as you can see, the additional deposit, in the initial deposit, you would have to check who the money is going to, and that's imperative. A contract is really not valid without determining where the escrow money is going to be held. Okay, that has created some real problems in the past for some agents, not necessarily in my office, but in other offices I've worked in, when they didn't define where the escrow money goes. So it's imperative that you define where the escrow money is going. Okay, and so the additional deposit in this case was going to the buyer's attorney. Paragraph D talks about the loan. If this is a cash deal, then I check the box other, I type in the word cash, okay, and I have 0 here. All right, but this is a loan. What type of loan? It's conventional, and the loan amount is $405,000. So that's what got filled in. And as you can see, it matches up with the number up here on the first page of the contract. Okay, further, then the next paragraph talks about when the mortgage needs to be completed and it's confirmed, and a commitment has been issued. And in this case, I went with the standard being within 30 calendar days after the attorney review is completed. Okay? Sometimes you have to define another day. You should always talk to the lender that you're working with on behalf of the buyer to make sure that they can meet whatever date you put on a contract. I tend to try to put the shortest date on a contract for closing to have my offer have a lot of strength. However, I need to ensure that the lender can meet that date. And in my case, I happen to use Keller Mortgage on this particular deal. And Keller Mortgage was able to meet a fairly good aggressive date of December 29th, considering where we're at right now on top of Thanksgiving. And this just came to pass. The following paragraph, paragraph 6, items included, which wraps around to the next page. As you can see, instead of listing everything out that was on the MLS listing, I put in as per Garden State MLS number, and that's the listing number. But I did type in including refrigerator, and the reason why is that's one of the pieces that could walk. The other items couldn't necessarily walk, and I have found agents buying appliances for their clients or listing agents buying appliances due to contract errors. So I want you to all be very conscious of washers, dryers, refrigerators, and perhaps microwaves if they're not built in. Okay, so washers, dryers, refrigerators for sure. Because there's usually a lot of misunderstandings about that. Okay, so that's why I make that known. Paragraph 7, there was nothing excluded, so I type in solid caps, none, so that it's very clear to everybody that there is absolutely nothing in that house being excluded as per the listing agreement. Now, if your buyer wanted something that wasn't within the listing, this is your opportunity to put it in the inclusions, okay? Or if they wanted something specifically removed from the home, like an above ground swimming pool, for example, this is where it would get put in, okay, for the removal, all right? Paragraph 10, it's an election box. The seller needs to complete this. I don't know whether the seller has been or hasn't been notified of municipal assessments. Paragraph 11 on line 181, what type of dwelling is this? This is a single family dwelling, okay? Not a condo, for example. Oops, and Sally missed a spot. I made a mistake. I meant to put a checkbox right here. Does everybody see this? Lead paint. You saw that I have a lead paint and I should have put the word applicable. I should have clicked the box yes. Next, do we have a inspection periods and et cetera? The standard dates, this contract allows for 10 days after attorney review, inspection periods. There is no POET system. Does everybody know what a POET system is? I can't see you guys. Can you just say yes or no?
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay, thank you. A POET system is a special water treatment system that is installed in areas where there is typically groundwater contamination. Think of DEP Superfund sites, for example. There's one close to where I live, an old dump in Chester Township. And in 1978, it was determined to be a Superfund site, groundwater contamination, and a street that was very close to the runoff from that before they did the work to encapsulate it and everything else. They ended up putting in, having wells monitored by the state of New Jersey to make sure that the drinking water going to that particular community was safe. You'll find that in certain areas, but it's very specific and it's usually, you know, very well known. So you probably won't run into that very often at this point. And that site now has finally, as of a couple of years ago, it has been remediated and public water was put in its place. Cesspools. Does everybody understand about cesspools? Does anybody know about a law that took place in 2012? And cesspools in the state?
I know the cesspool.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I know the cesspool, but I don't know the law.
Okay, the cesspools are illegal in the state of New Jersey as of 2012, okay? A cesspool is a line that comes out of the house for waste that goes directly, without a tank in between, goes directly to a seepage pit. Without that tank in between to process the liquids versus the solids, it's considered to be a cesspool. You can no longer pass title in the state of New Jersey on a cesspool. It must be changed out. So when they made cesspools illegal, if you lived in a house that had a cesspool and you weren't planning to move and you did nothing, you can still have a cesspool on your property as long as it is not backing up into your house, the waste doesn't back up into your house or doesn't break the surface ground. And that would be a cause to have to do something by law. Otherwise, you could live happily ever after, you and your cesspool, until the day you die, and it's all good. But if you want to sell your house and transfer title, you must now change that out. Now, if you as a seller don't want to change it out, you got to find a buyer that's going to be willing to do so, but title cannot pass without that being handled. Okay? And there are all kinds of questions that you could answer based upon that if it is, in fact, a cesspool. And I do want to warn you, you'd think that cesspools don't still exist, and they absolutely do. Recently, one of our agents had a older property in Chester Township that they were representing for sale, and they had work done on the septic maybe 10 years ago. And so everybody thought everything was fine, and it turned out that there was another line coming out of the house for gray water. Does everybody know gray water has to do with maybe your showers, your washing machines, not your toilets? Okay, and it was going directly into a seepage pit, therefore it was considered a cesspool and it needed to be properly abandoned. So things can come up. If you ever have any questions about cesspools, I am pretty much, or septics, I pretty much am the queen sitting out here in Chester and have a wealth of experience on all sides with that I can help anybody with, okay? Other tests that get done, you can see that I kept using all of these defaults in the contract. You should know the contract. You should read it for content. There's no need to fill things out if you're willing to go with the defaults. And I'm just scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Here we go. Here's the most important page of the contract other than page 1 and 2. This is a page that shows how you're going to get paid. And I've actually had people tender contracts to me that don't have any commission on them. I said, oh, that's great. I get to keep it all. You like to work for free. So let's talk about how to properly fill this out. In this case, I have the buyer. So Keller Williams Town Square Realty is who I work for. And I, the representative, Sarah Sally Smith, okay, the name of the licensee, I'm acting as a buyer's agent, and Remax Heritage Properties, who's representing the seller, is acting as a seller's agent. So the representation has been confirmed again here. As we scroll down, the listing firm versus the participating firm. Participating firm is for me as the sales agent. The listing firm, again, is Remax Heritage Properties. Their REC numbers, the listing agent, her real estate number, their address, the main telephone number, the number of the agent's email address, and here it asks what the commission due to the listing firm. We will never know what the commission to the listing firm is. We don't have the right to know. That's a contract between them and the seller. We only have a right to know how much they're going to pay us. And we know that from the MLS sheet. Typically, it's approximately 2.5% minus an MLS fee. Okay, in this case, I filled out our REC number. This is the same one that you guys have as well. And then my license number, our information, my cell phone number, and here we go. The commission is 2.5% minus $95. This is very important that you fill this out correctly, this piece here. Does everybody know how to find the REC license numbers? Does everybody know what an REC license number is?
No, why don't you go over it?
Okay, that sounds really good. I'm sorry? I didn't hear.
I just noticed they are two different, but one is for Keller Williams and one is yours.
Yes. Okay. So And this is where I'm going to hope that sharing my screen is going to work. So I'm going to stop the share on the screen here. Or can we defer this to the end? Sam,
Yeah. I'll
I
make
need to say I need to, after I go through this, I need to go to the REC numbers,
Yeah.
okay? And that way I won't have to get off of this screen, okay?
Yep.
Thanks, guys. All right, so we move on to the next part of the contract. Is the buyer or seller a real estate agent? No. And here at the end, what attachments do I have? I have the lead-based paint addendum. I caught it here, I forgot it in the upper part, okay, which is now a part of the contract. And in my case, I wanted to add strength to my contract by saying the buyer is currently renting and has nothing to sell. Here is the property disclosure agreement. As I told you, we need one for every property due to E&O concerns to make sure your E&O coverage kicks in, guys. So that's imperative. And if there isn't one provided by the listing company, then you're going to need to fill out a form of waiver and have your client state, sign that waiver form proving that they understand there was never a seller's disclosure prepared. I always attach a copy of the tax record to my offers. I get it from njactb.org. And I like this tax record because it tells me square footage, it shows me title transfers that may have taken place in this section, gives me all the good information that I'm looking for. I can see if the tax assessed value has changed, and I can see that it did between this year and this year. Okay, there was a reval in the town. And of course, I had written that the Garden State MLS listing number here was made part of the contract with the inclusions and exclusions. And so what did I do? I had my buyer sign that form as well and made it a part of the contract. Okay, and that's pretty much it for that. I'm just gonna go to a listing agreement really quickly and tell me, Sam, can you see me moving through these screens?
Yep. So far, so good.
Oh my God, this is just so wonderful. Okay. All right, so I'm in one of my listings right now, 22 Stony Brook, which we just put under contract. There are a lot of things that I do, and you can see there's a whole host of information in here. You can see a lot of stuff. I'm going to focus on filling out the listing agreement in this case. And here we go. Again, many forms to be done, but the listing agreement needs to be filled in properly. And I will tell you that there have been some disappointments on behalf of some listing agents because they didn't complete the listing agreement properly and it voided their agreement. And when a seller wanted to get out of their listing agreement with us, we had to let them go per their wishes without any pushback whatsoever because it wasn't an invalid agreement that we were operating off of. So let's understand what has to be on the agreement and what makes it a valid listing agreement. Contractually, in the state of New Jersey, in order to have a contract be valid, it must have a date, it must be signed, it must have consideration, okay? And it must properly denote the parties, okay? That's briefly what it needs to have. In this case, we need to have the seller's information. I need to know the property that's being put up for sale. It may not be the same as where the seller lives, okay? We must be filled out. This is who we are, Keller Williams Town Square Realty at 222 Mount Airy Road in Basking Ridge, okay? Our office telephone number must be there, okay? And then I have our fax number, and then the list price must be filled in or it's not a valid contract. And in this case, it's not up for rent, so rental is NA. You must also have a listing period, a start and a stop date. This must be filled in. You must have a start and a stop. In section 3, you put yourself in as the representative authorized on behalf of Keller Williams Town Square Realty to represent this seller. You need to elect how you are representing them. I'll leave it very simple for all of you. You should always be checking the box for seller or landlord's agent and dual disclose agent if the opportunity arises. If for any reason you feel you need to check this box or this box, you need to speak with me first, okay? Because I can't imagine a single reason as to why we would ever check this box. And if we're checking this box, you need to understand all the things you can't do, okay? So again, you should always be electing that we are acting as a seller's agent or and a dual disclose agent if the opportunity arises. Now, how could that opportunity arise? It could arise that you not only have the seller, but you have the buyer, and that's wonderful. You get a home run on that one. You get a double ender, double header, whatever you want to call it. It's wonderful, wonderful. Comes with some additional burdens, but you'll get through it. It'll be terrific. Or it could be your listing and Sam, who's an agent, brings the buyer. And if Sam brought the buyer and Sam works for Keller Williams Town Square Realty and you work for Keller Williams, we are acting as dual disclosed agents, okay? And therefore, we would want to make sure that we would allow anybody within our office also to sell it because we are the #1 agency in Somerset County. And we would never want to disadvantage our sellers from not allowing somebody in our own firm to sell the property because they'd be missing out on a lot of opportunity. Section 4 is where I find a lot of mistakes happen. So let's go through it. Subagents. We do not practice with subagents in New Jersey. And in fact, it's probably something that should be removed from the MLS form. It's an old concept. And I can't think of anybody that works with subagents. So subagents is always no. And it's known as SA on the bottom of the Garden State MLS listing. Buyer's brokers, of course, you act as a buyer's broker. Of course, the answer is always yes. And transaction brokers our office policy is always yes. So no, yes, yes. And filling in the blanks here is what the compensation actually is. We have an office policy that you must pay out 2.5% to all buyers brokers. So it must be a minimum of 2.5%. It could be more if that's what you and your seller decide, but it has to be 2.5%. So if you want to pay out less than that so that your commission's improved, the office won't allow you to do it. So you need to explain that to your seller that it's a policy. And the reason we have this policy is fair because we are trying to treat our other cooperating brokerages as fairly as they treat us. And we are not a discount broker, okay? We are not a discount broker. So 2.5% minus the MLS fee, which is a minimum of $150. If you're listed in multiple MLSs, you may wish to increase that amount, and you have the right to do so. But this is the minimum it must be.
I'm sorry, is there a maximum that you can do the minus?
Well, no, not defined by policy. Why don't you tell me what you'd like to charge?
No. I was just curious, like, because you said you could up it, so I was just curious.
Yeah, here's what I do see. I see up to 300.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot.
But that's a lot of money if you really think about it, and it's because it might be in 4 MLSs.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Transaction broker has to be a minimum of 1.5. Okay, has to be a minimum of 1.5. All right. The sales commission has to be a minimum. Office policy is a minimum of 5%. If you're looking to do less than 5%, you need to come and talk to me before you offer that out. Okay. And then I'm going to tell you all the reasons why you probably don't want to do it. But I'll leave that discussion to another day. All right. So it has to have that. In this case, and there's no rental commission. The next box, the seller did authorize a key box on their property. So I checked yes. In this section here, we're simply talking about what we're paying out to our buyer's broker, which meets up with what's up here, the 2.5% minus the 150. And it's really important, guys, that you put the % sign in and the dollar sign, because I don't really know what 2.5 minus 150 really is. Is it 2.5 doves minus 150 rocks? That doesn't mean anything to me. So please make sure you use your dollar signs and your % signs. And in this case, I am not filling something in that should for any reason. If there was, a tenancy and the property was sold, it doesn't apply in my case on this one. I also fill out my name, my MLS ID, not to be confused with your REC license number, but your MLS ID is your 6-digit code that you use in the MLS. And our office code is 3789 in the Garden State MLS. Okay, is everybody good? Yes?
So far, so good.
Okay, good. All right, so I'm gonna get out of those screens. I'm gonna stop the share for just a second. Oh, I'm back and I can see everybody. This is so great. Oh, and we're done in like 2 minutes, all right? The only last thing I'm gonna talk about is the REC number, okay? So I need to log into my MLS and hopefully you're gonna be able to stay up. We're gonna be able to do that, but we'll find out, okay? So here we go. I'm gonna go back here. Let me ask you something, Sam, do you see a Google screen up?
Yes, I do.
Oh, I love that. I just love it. Thanks. I'm gonna log into my MLS. You guys see the MLS?
Yep, still good.
Oh my God, this is like fabulous. Okay. So let me do it this way. And so agent, I'm gonna type in my own information. Okay, so I type my name in and I can type anybody's name in and everybody knows how to find these records, right? Would everybody agree with that statement? Yes?
Yep. I see heads nodding.
Great. Okay, thank you. I can't see anybody's face at this point. So I've clicked on it and I've logged into my record and everybody knows how to get there. And you see where it says, anything in blue is a link, by the way. And you see where it says, click here to launch the license system.
Actually, Sally, you'll have to pull up. It opened in a separate window for that one. So close.
It did? Now how am I gonna do that, Sam?
Stop sharing and then go to reshare again, and it should let you pull up the window.
Let's try it.
Fingers
I'm gonna
crossed.
pray that it works, buddy. Oh, here we go. Okay, are we good?
You're good.
All right, I love it. Technology at its finest. Okay, so everybody sees here my MLS ID. Everybody sees here our office ID that we used before. And everybody sees that anything in blue is a link, correct? So we click on the link that takes us where? To njdobi.org, which is New Jersey Department of Banking and Insurance. And here you can see my information. And you can see Sarah Smith, and you can see that it's got these 2 numbers. If I open up this link, oh, can you see this link?
Yes.
Oh, thank God. Okay, do you see Sarah Smith and my reference number, the 04505571?
Yes.
That is my New Jersey real estate license number. So when it asked on the contract for the REC license number, this is it. Okay, and the one for our company is this, the 0999108. You find that the same for any agent out there. You can find it through the MLS. If you can't find it through the MLS because they're not in the MLS, you can log in directly to NJDOBI and do a licensee search. Okay?
Yep.
And I will tell you that if you remember this, you will look a lot more professional than some agents that have been out there for a really long time and they seem to mess this up as if they never were taught and they had no idea how to do it. Okay? Anybody have any questions? I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'm going to come back and look at you guys. It's so much better when I can see you. So, does anybody have any questions for today?
No.
Are we good? Does everybody have a little bit more confidence in the contracts? Or was it a little too 101 for you guys? Margaret, I can't hear you. Unmute yourself. Down in your left-hand corner. I still, here. I'll unmute you if I can. Huh. That isn't working, Margaret. Okay. There, go ahead, Margaret.
Had it.
I can't hear her. Okay.
There we go.
I said there is a lot of papers, especially for someone who never draw a contract.
Yes.
This is a little bit confusing for that. Sorry, I didn't brush my hair yet. I'm just
No,
looking.
that's okay.
Which I just washed my hair and
I don't know, except for this lipstick, I got no makeup on. We're not even talking about it, are we really? And there's dog hair all over my sweater, please. No.
I know. So it is very interesting. I'm very excited. As much as it's confusing, it's just like habit of doing it and knowing where to click. And
No,
maybe reading before, like I don't have any contracts. I don't have anything else to do. I might as well get kind of look through those contracts.
Yeah, and here's what I offer everybody. When I always feel that it's always good to write a contract on your own home, or just pick a listing out of the MLS and write a contract on it, and write a listing agreement as if you were listing your own house.
That was
and then you know it's a great practice.
That was actually something which I was planning on doing with.
Good.
Poor Sam takes a little bit like he might get sick of me, but he helps me a lot.
You know what I'm going to tell you? Sam gets lonely sitting there at the front desk, so you just need to like call him.
I know.
Oh, so lonely. So I see no one all day.
You don't see me.
I thought I will actually write a contract and see how well I will do on my own house.
That sounds good.
Numbers with the fake.
Well, yeah. It's not about that. But that I think that would be great. Or take an MLS listing and write a contract, but write a listing agreement on your own house. I would also do that.
My buyer also, so I will.
And I'm happy to review it. I mean, if you're not working with the coach, is everybody working with the coach?
I do.
That's good.
I did, yeah.
You did, okay.
The other thing that if I could offer too, like, cause I've done it a few times now, but what I did was because the contract has all those little line numbers.
Yes.
So I like made a cheat sheet and like, that's what I always go back to. And like, so I have like the line number and like what exactly should be in there.
Good.
And so even now, even though I've done it a few times, you do get used to it, but I still go back to the line number to make sure that like this could stay blank, this needs to be checked, add this, because it is a lot, but the line numbers really help determine what should be in the boxes.
They do. And I think the only other thing I'm going to offer, today we focused on how to fill it out. I spent a little time on the importance of the forms and the why the forms that we need as an office, because by law or compliance or, whatever the case may be. And that's important, I think, to understand. What I didn't go through is what the contract means. Okay. And I will tell you, you need to read the contract. Don't have the first time you read that contract be when you're going to present it to a buyer to sign it. Okay. Because old school Sally, because I started 17 years ago in this business, when I sit down with the buyer the first time and they're signing something, even if I'm not with them because I'm doing it remotely and I haven't been face to face with anybody to sign anything in a very long time in my career, I still walk through the contract and explain to them basically what each paragraph means. Yeah. And sometimes when I'm working with the buyer, I send them that contract well in advance of us ever writing a contract, so that at the time when you start writing the contract, there isn't this fear factor like the first time, like, oh my God, what am I signing? Okay. It's a good practice. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving. Okay. Everybody have fun.
Happy cooking.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Bye.